The world will tell you to be realistic. It will show you your bank account, your account circumstances, your limitations, and declare these to be the immutable facts of your existence. But I tell you tonight that these are not facts at all. They are merely the outpitching of your past assumptions, the crystallized thoughts that you have held about yourself and your world. The man who looks at his empty wallet and says, "This is my reality," has forgotten the most fundamental truth of existence, that consciousness is the only reality and that all else is but its shadow. When I speak of ignoring your reality, I do not mean to live in denial or to close your eyes to pierce to be. I mean something far more profound. I mean to recognize that what you call reality is simply the lag between your assumption and its manifestation. It is the interval between the seed planted in consciousness and the harvest reaped in experience. The man who plants a seed does not dig it up each day to see if it has grown. He waters it, tends it, and assumes its growth even when he cannot see it. So too must you tend your assumptions with the same faith, the same persistent assumption of their fulfillment. You see, my friends, assumption is not merely positive thinking or wishful hoping. Assumption is the act of taking something for granted, of accepting it as true, regardless of external evidence. When you assume something, you live from that assumption. You think from it, you feel from it, you act from it. You do not think of it as something you hope will happen, but as something that already is. This is the secret that separates those who manifest their desires from those who merely dream about them. Consider the man who desires wealth but looks at his poverty and says, "But this is my reality." He has made his current state his God, his standard of truth. He worships at the altar of his circumstances and wonders why they never change. But the man who assumes wealth, who thinks from wealth, who feels from wealth, who acts from the consciousness of wealth, will find that his external world must conform to his internal state. For the outer world is but the reflection of the inner world, and it cannot help but mirror back to you the assumptions you persistently hold. The great mistake that most people make is in trying to change their outer world while leaving their inner world unchanged. They try to force circumstances to bend to their will through effort and struggle, never realizing that circumstances are but the echo of consciousness. You cannot change the echo by shouting at it. You must change the voice that creates it. You cannot change your reflection by manipulating the mirror. You must change what stands before it. This is why I say to you tonight, ignore your reality and keep assuming. Do not let the evidence of your senses dictate to you what is possible. Do not let the opinions of others determine what you can become. Do not let your past failures convince you that your future must be the same. For in the realm of consciousness, all things are possible to him who believes, and belief is simply assumption persisted in. When you assume something, you enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You do not try to figure out how it will happen or when it will happen. You simply live in the feeling that it has already happened. This is not make-believe or fantasy. This is the very mechanism by which all things come into being. For everything that exists in your outer world first existed in someone's consciousness as an assumption, as the veiling, as a belief. The house you live in was once just an assumption in the mind of an architect. The device you use to communicate was once just an assumption in the mind of an inventor. The love you experience was once just an assumption in your heart. Everything without exception follows this pattern. First the assumption, then the manifestation. This is the law of consciousness, and it operates with the same precision and reliability as any law of physics. But here is what most people fail to understand. The law of consciousness operates continuously, whether you are conscious of it or not. You are always assuming something about yourself in your world. You are always living from some set of beliefs and expectations. The question is not whether you are using this law, but whether you are using it consciously and deliberately or unconsciously and by default. When you look at your current circumstances and react to them, you are assuming that they are fixed and permanent. When you worry about your future based on your past, you are assuming that your past determines your future. When you let the opinions of others shape your self-image, you are assuming that they know you better than you know yourself. These are all assumptions, and they are all creating your reality, just as surely as any conscious, deliberate assumption would. The difference is that conscious assumption is assumption by choice, while unconscious assumption is assumption by habit. The man who consciously assumes wealth lies from wealth and experiences wealth. The man who unconsciously assumes poverty lies from poverty and experiences poverty. Both are using the same law, but one is using it deliberately while the other is using it by default. This is why it is so crucial that you learn to ignore your current reality and persist in your assumptions. Your current reality is nothing more than the sum total of your past assumptions. It is yesterday's consciousness made manifest. But you are not bound by yesterday's consciousness. You are not limited by what you have been or what you have done. You are the operant power of consciousness itself. And consciousness is infinitely creative, infinitely flexible, infinitely capable of new assumptions and new manifestations. When you truly understand this, you will see that every moment is a new opportunity to assume something different about yourself in your world. You will see that you are not the victim of your circumstances, but the creator of them. You will see that you are not at the mercy of external forces, but the very force that shapes the external world through your assumptions. But assumption alone is not enough. You must persist in your assumption. You must maintain it in the face of contradictory evidence. You must hold to it when the world tells you that you are wrong. You must nurture it when doubt creeps in and fear whispers its lies. This is the test of your understanding, the proof of your faith, the measure of your mastery. The man who assumes wealth for a day and then returns to assumptions of poverty has not truly assumed wealth at all. He has merely entertained a pleasant thought. But the man who assumes wealth and persists in that assumption, who lives from it and thinks from it and feels from it, regardless of what his senses tell him, will find that his assumption must externalize itself in his experience. This is not always easy, my friends. The world will challenge your assumption at every turn. It will show you evidence that contradicts what you assume. It will present you with circumstances that seem to prove that your assumption is false. But this is precisely when you must remember that appearance is not reality, that the external world is but the shadow of consciousness, and that shadows change when you move the light. When you persist in your assumption, despite contradictory evidence, you are not being foolish or unrealistic. You are being scientific. You are conducting an experiment in consciousness. You are testing the law that states that consciousness is the only reality and that all else is but its expression. And like any good scientist, you must be willing to maintain your hypothesis in the face of initial contradictory results, knowing that the law will ultimately prove itself through your persistence. The great mystics and teachers throughout history have all understood this principle. They have all taught in their own way that the outer world is but the reflection of the inner world, and that by changing the inner, we change the outer. They have all emphasized the importance of faith, of belief, of assumption, of living from the end rather than living from the beginning. But what they often fail to make clear is that this is not a matter of religion or spirituality or metaphysics. This is a matter of psychology, of the very structure of consciousness itself. When you assume something, you are not invoking supernatural forces or appealing to external deities. You are simply using the natural creative power of your own consciousness in the way it was designed to be used. Consciousness is creative. This is its nature, its function, its purpose. It cannot help but create. It is always creating, always expressing, always manifesting. The only question is what it is creating. And what it creates is determined by what you assume, by what you take for granted, by what you live from. When you assume success, consciousness creates success. When you assume failure, consciousness creates failure. When you assume love, consciousness creates love. When you assume loneliness, consciousness creates loneliness. There is no judgment in this law, no morality, no favoritism. It simply creates what you assume, regardless of whether that assumption serves you or harms you. This is why it is so important that you become conscious of your assumptions. Most people are completely unconscious of what they assume about themselves and their world. They react to circumstances without ever questioning the beliefs that create those circumstances. They complain about their problems without ever examining the assumptions that generate those problems. They hope for change while maintaining the very consciousness that prevents change. But when you become conscious of your assumptions, you become the master of your fate. You realize that you are not at the mercy of external forces, but that external forces are at the mercy of your consciousness. You understand that you are not the victim of circumstances, but the creator of circumstances. You see that you are not powerless, but infinitely powerful through the creative power of assumption. This power is not preserved for the few, or the gifted, or the chosen. It is the birthright of every human being. It is the very essence of what it means to be conscious. Every person who has ever lived has used this power, whether they knew it or not. Every achievement, every creation, every breakthrough in human history has been the result of someone assuming something different about what was possible. The man who first threw assumed that flight was possible when everyone else assumed it was impossible. The woman who first voted assumed that women had the right to vote when everyone else assumed they did not. The scientists who discovered a cure assumed that the disease could be cured when everyone else assumed it was incurable. In every case, the assumption preceded the manifestation. In every case, someone ignored the current reality and persisted in assuming something different. And this is exactly what you must do with your own life. You must ignore the current reality of your circumstances and persist in assuming the reality of your desires. You must live from the end, not from the beginning. You must think from your wish fulfilled, not from your wish denied. You must feel from your assumption of success, not from your observation of failure. This requires a complete reversal of the way most people approach their lives. Most people live from their circumstances. They look at what is and extrapolate what will be. They use their past to predict their future. They let their environment determine their state of consciousness. But you must learn to live from your consciousness and let your consciousness determine your environment. When you wake up in the morning, do not ask yourself what your circumstances are. Ask yourself what your assumptions are. Do not look at your bank account and let it determine your financial consciousness. Look at your financial consciousness and let it determine your bank account. Do not examine your relationships and let them determine your capacity for love. Examine your capacity for love and let it determine your relationships. This is the art of living from the end of assuming the state you desire to experience. It is the art of being feeling what you want to experience, of thinking from where you want to be rather than from where you are. But remember, my friends, assumption is not just a mental exercise. It is a whole being commitment. When you assume something, you must assume it with your entire being. You must think it, feel it, breathe it, live it. You must make it so real in your consciousness that it becomes more real to you than the evidence of your senses. This is where most people fail. They try to assume with their mind while their heart doubts. They try to think positive thoughts while their emotions remain negative. They try to imagine success while their body language expresses failure. But assumption is not partial, it is total. It is not intellectual, it is experiential. It is not what you think about, it is what you think from. When you truly assume something, you do not have to convince yourself that it is true. You do not have to argue with your doubts or overcome your fears. You simply live from the assumption as naturally as you live from any other belief you hold. You do not have to convince yourself that your name is what it is or that you live where you live. You simply assume these things and live from them. So too must you assume your desires and live from them. This is why the feeling of the wish fulfilled is so important. Feeling is the secret of assumption. When you feel that your wish is fulfilled, you are assuming its fulfillment. When you feel successful, you are assuming success. When you feel loved, you are assuming love. When you feel prosperous, you are assuming prosperity. The feeling is not the result of the assumption. The feeling is the assumption itself. Most people have this backward. They think that they will feel successful when they achieve success, that they will feel love when they find love, that they will feel prosperous when they acquire prosperity. But this is putting the cart before the horse. You must feel successful in order to achieve success. You must feel loved in order to attract love. You must feel prosperous in order to manifest prosperity. This is not pretending or make-believe. This is recognizing that feeling is the language of consciousness, the way that consciousness communicates with itself. When you feel something, you are assuming it. When you assume something, you are creating it. When you create something in consciousness, it must manifest in experience. This is the law, and it cannot be broken, but the law requires persistence. You are simply maintaining the state of consciousness that corresponds to your desire and allowing the law to operate through you. The man who plants a seed does not become impatient with the seed. He does not dig it up every day to see if it has grown. He does not doubt its ability to grow or question the laws of nature. He simply waters it, tends it, and trusts in the process. So too must you water your assumptions, tend your consciousness, and trust in the process of manifestation. But what happens when doubt creeps in? What happens when fear whispers its lies? What happens when the world seems to conspire against your assumption? This is when you must remember that doubt and fear are nothing more than negative assumptions, and they operate by the same law as positive assumptions. When you doubt your ability to succeed, you are assuming failure. When you fear that your desire will not manifest, you are assuming its absence. The key is not to fight these negative assumptions, but to replace them with positive ones. You do not overcome doubt by struggling against it. You overcome doubt by assuming certainty. You do not conquer fear by battling it. You conquer fear by assuming courage. You do not eliminate negative assumptions by focusing on them. You eliminate them by focusing on positive assumptions. This is the true meaning of faith. Faith is not believing in something despite the evidence. Faith is assuming something despite the appearance. Faith is living from the reality of your desire rather than from the reality of your circumstances. Faith is persistence in assumption regardless of external conditions. When you have faith, you do not need proof. You do not need evidence. You do not need confirmation from others. You need only your assumption and your persistence in that assumption. For you know that your assumption maintained with persistence must manifest in your experience. This is not hope or wishful thinking. This is confidence in the law of consciousness. And what is this law? It is simply this. Consciousness is the only reality, and all else is but its expression. What you are conscious of being, you are. What you assume yourself to be, you become. What you feel yourself to be, you attract. What you think, from you experience. This is the law, and it operates with mathematical precision. But the law requires that you operate from consciousness, not from circumstances. You must think from your desire, not about your desire. You must feel from your assumption, not about your assumption. You must live from your wish fulfilled, not from your Tao wish denied. This is the difference between those who manifest their desires and those who merely dream about them. The dreamer thinks about his desire. The manifester thinks from his desire. The dreamer feels about his assumption. The manifest feels from his assumption. The dreamer hopes for his wish to be fulfilled. The manifest arrives from his wish fulfilled. When you live from your wish fulfilled, you are not trying to get something. You are being something. You are not attempting to become something. You are assuming something. You are not working toward a goal. You are living from the goal achieved. This is the secret of effortless manifestation, of natural success, of spontaneous fulfillment. The man who assumes wealth does not struggle to become wealthy. He simply lies from wealth, thinks from wealth, feels from wealth, and acts from wealth. Wealth is not his goal. Wealth is his assumption. He does not try to get money. He assumes he has money. He does not work to become rich. He assumes he is rich. And because he assumes these things, because he lives from these assumptions, they must manifest in his experience. The same is true for any desire you may have. The woman who assumes love does not struggle to find love. She simply lies from love, thinks from love, feels from love, and acts from love. Love is not her goal. Love is her assumption. She does not try to get love. She assumes she has love. She does not work to become loved. She assumes she is loved. You simply persist in the feeling of having already achieved it. But here is what you must understand. The law of assumption operates regardless of the size or scope of your desire. It works just as well for small things as for large things, for simple things as for complex things, for personal things as for universal things. The law does not discriminate. It does not judge. It simply creates what you assume. The man who assumes he will find a parking space finds a parking space. The woman who assumes she will meet the right person meets the right person. The student who assumes he will pass the test passes the test. The entrepreneur who assumes her business will succeed succeeds. The artist who assumes his work will be appreciated is appreciated. In every case, the assumption precedes the manifestation. But you must be careful not to limit your assumptions by your past experience or your current circumstances. You must not assume that because something has never happened before, it cannot happen now. You must not assume that because you have failed in the past, you will fail in the future. You must not assume that because others have said something is impossible, it is impossible for you. The law of assumption knows no limitations except those you impose upon it through your own beliefs. If you assume that something is possible, it is possible. If you assume that something is impossible, it is impossible. If you assume that you can have your desire, you can have it. If you assume that you cannot have your desire, you cannot have it. The law simply creates what you assume. Regardless of whether your assumption serves you or limits you, this is why it is so important that you examine your assumptions carefully. Most people are completely unconscious of what they assume about themselves and their world. They have inherited their assumptions from their parents, their culture, their education, their experience. They have never questioned these assumptions or examined their validity. They simply accept them as truth and live from. But inherited assumptions are not necessarily true assumptions. They are simply assumptions that have been passed down from one generation to the next. They are assumptions that work for others in different circumstances at different times. They are assumptions that may or may not serve you in your current situation with your current desires. You must learn to question your assumptions. You must examine them, test them, and discard those that do not serve you. You must be willing to adopt new assumptions that align with your desires and support your goals. You must be willing to assume things that others might consider impossible or unrealistic. For what is realistic? Reality is simply the sum total of what has been assumed by consciousness. What we call the real world is simply the collective assumptions of humanity made manifest. But these assumptions are not fixed or permanent. They are constantly changing as consciousness evolves and new assumptions are made. What was once considered impossible is now considered commonplace. What was once considered fantasy is now considered fact. What was once considered miraculous is now considered normal. All of this has happened because someone was willing to assume something different, to ignore the current reality and persist in a new assumption. And this is exactly what you must do. You must be willing to assume something different about yourself and your world. You must be willing to ignore the current reality of your circumstances and persist in the assumption of your desires. You must be willing to live from the end rather than from the beginning. This requires courage, my friends. It requires the courage to stand alone in your assumption when the world tells you that you are wrong. It requires the courage to persist in your feeling when the evidence contradicts your assumption. It requires the courage to maintain your vision when others cannot see what you see. But this courage is not a special gift reserved for the few. It is the natural result of understanding the law of assumption. When you truly understand that consciousness is the only reality and that all else is but its expression, you gain the courage to assume anything you desire. When you truly understand that your assumptions create your reality, you gain the courage to ignore current reality and persist in new assumptions. This understanding is not intellectual, it is experiential. It comes not from reading about the law, but from using the law. It comes not from thinking about assumption, but from assuming. It comes not from hoping for results, but from living from results. So I challenge you tonight to begin this experiment. Choose something you desire, something you want to experience, something you want to become. Now ignore the current reality of your circumstances and begin to assume that you already have it, that you already are it, that you already experience it. Live from this assumption, think from this assumption, feel from this assumption. Persist in this assumption, regardless of what your senses tell you. Do not try to figure out how it will happen. Do not worry about when it will happen. Do not concern yourself with whether it will happen. Simply assume that it has already happened and live from that assumption. This is the only way to prove to yourself the truth of what I have shared with you tonight. You see, my friends, belief is not something you can manufacture through effort or will. Belief is something that grows naturally from experience. The more you use the law of assumption, the more you will believe in it. The more you see it work in your life, the more convinced you will become of its truth. The more you experience its power, the more confident you will become in its reliability. But you must begin. You must take the first step. You must make the first assumption. You must persist in that assumption until it manifests in your experience. Only then will you truly understand what I have shared with you tonight. Only then will you truly know the power of assumption. And when you do, when you see your assumption manifest in your experience, when you witness the law of consciousness operating through you, you will never again doubt your ability to create your reality. You will never again feel powerless in the face of circumstances. You will never again believe that you are at the mercy of external forces. You will know with absolute certainty that you are the operant power of your own consciousness. You will know that you are the creator of your own reality. You will know that you are the master of your own fate. And you will know that there is no limit to what you can assume, no limit to what you can create, no limit to what you can become. This is the truth I have shared with you tonight. You are the dreamer and the dream, the creator and the creation, the assumer and the assumed. When you truly understand this, when you truly live from this understanding, you will have unlocked the greatest secret of existence, that you are the power that creates your world. And that power operates through assumption. So assume, my friends, assume persistently, assume without limit, assume without fear, assume without doubt. For your assumptions are the very substance of your reality. And your reality is nothing more than your assumptions made manifest. When you change your assumptions, you change your reality. When you ignore your current reality and persist in new assumptions, you create a new ISO-T. This is the law. This is the way. This is the truth that will set you free from the bondage of circumstances and make you the master of your own destiny. Use it well. Persist in it faithfully, and you will discover that there is no limit to what you can assume, and therefore no limit to what you can experience. The power is within you. The law is available to you. The key is in your hands. Now go forth and assume you're good. Persist in your assumption, and watch as your reality transforms to match your consciousness. For this is the way of the Master, the path of the Creator, the secret of those who know that consciousness is the only reality and that all else is but its magnificent expression. Now let me tell you a secret. The world you perceive is nothing more than the outpicturing of where you have placed your focus. Everything in your world, every circumstance, every relationship, every material condition is the harvest of seeds you have sown with your attention. Where attention goes, energy flows, and manifestation follows. You see, the creative power that sleeps within you responds not to idle wishes or fleeting thoughts, but to the state upon which you have placed your focus with conviction. The Bible tells us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But thinking is not enough. It is the sustained focus of thought imbued with feeling that reshapes your reality. I once knew a man who desired financial abundance. He would affirm daily, "I am wealthy," yet continue to dwell in thoughts of lack, scarcity, and limitation. His words proclaimed abundance, but his focus remained fixed on absence. And so, absence persisted in his experience. His focus, you see, was divided. Now let me clarify what I mean by focus. Focus is not concentration that creates tension. True focus is the natural consequence of fascination. When you are fascinated by something, your attention is effortlessly drawn to it. This is the kind of focus that transforms. To create a new reality, you must become so fascinated with your desired state that it consumes your consciousness. You must live from it. View the world through its lens and respond to life as though your desire were already an accomplished fact. This is the new level of focus required for manifestation. The great tragedy is that most people focus intently on what they do not want and then marvel at why these unwanted things keep appearing in their lives. Do you not see? Whatever commands your focus multiplies in your experience, regardless of whether you want it or not. The outer world is dead. It has no power to create, no power to cause. It is simply effect and echo, a shadow of your inner focus. Change your focus and you change your world. This is the law. Now, what does this new level of focus look like in practice? It requires 4 elements: clarity, consistency, conviction, and detachment. First, clarity. You must know precisely what you desire. Vague wishes produce vague results. Define your desire in vivid detail. See it, feel it, touch it in your imagination. Make it as real to your senses as the chair you sit upon. I recall working with a young woman who wanted to find her ideal partner. When I asked her to describe this person, she gave only the most general description: someone kind. She said, "Someone who loves me." I told her, "Your focus lacks definition. Sharpen your vision. What values must this person embody? How do you feel in their presence? What kind of life do you share together?" As she brought her desire to sharper focus, her manifestation accelerated. Second, consistency. A focused mind is one that returns again and again to the same assumption, building conviction through repetition. The world is changed not by sporadic bursts of imagination, but by the groove worn deep by consistent focus. Think of it this way. If you plant a seed and dig it up each day to check its progress, it will never grow. Similarly, if you assume your desire one moment, then return to the old state the next, you uproot the seed of manifestation before it can take root. Consistency of focus allows the seed to flourish unseen until it breaks through into expression. Consider the story in Scripture of the prophet Elijah. He sent his servant 7 times to look for signs of rain during a drought. The servant saw nothing 6 times, but Elijah maintained his focus, knowing the rain would come. On the 7th time, the servant reported seeing a small cloud. From this tiny manifestation came abundant rain. Had Elijah abandoned his focus after the first or second attempt, the manifestation would have been aborted. Third, conviction. It is not enough to think about your desire, you must think from it. This is faith, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Conviction is the feeling that your desire is done. finished, complete in the invisible realm, and must by law appear your visible world. Let me tell you of a man I knew who desired a promotion at work. For months, nothing happened, though he affirmed his desire daily. When I spoke with him, I discovered that he was affirming from a place of doubt. He was saying the words, but did not believe them. I told him, "You must convince yourself first. You must reach such conviction that even if the whole world denied it, you would stand unshaken in your assumption." He began to imagine each night just before sleep that his colleagues were congratulating him on his promotion. He felt their handshakes, heard their words, felt the joy in his heart. He did this with complete conviction, as though experiencing a memory rather than creating a fantasy. Within 3 weeks, he received to see the promotion, a position that had not even existed when he began his focused work. Fourth, detachment. This seems paradoxical, but true focus includes the ability to detach from the how and when of manifestation. Attachment creates anxiety, and anxiety dilutes focus. When you truly know that your desire is yours, you can release the urgency and desperate longing that indicates lack of faith. Detachment means you plant the seed, water it with attention, and then allow the invisible forces of creation to do their perfect work without interference. It is the opposite of indifference. It is supreme confidence that what is done in consciousness must appear in reality. Now let me address a question that may have formed in your mind. If focus is so powerful, why do I sometimes focus intently on something and still not perceive it? The answer is simple but profound. Your conscious focus must be aligned with your subconscious assumptions. You see, your subconscious mind holds beliefs about yourself and the world that may contradict your conscious wishes. And it is the subconscious that truly determines your focus. You may consciously focus on wealth while subconsciously believing you are unworthy of abundance. In such a case, your true focus, your subconscious focus, is on unworthiness, not on wealth. This is why I teach the technique of feeling the wish fulfilled as you fall asleep. In the drowsy state between wakefulness and sleep, the conscious mind relaxes its guard and the subconscious becomes receptive to new impressions. Impress upon your subconscious the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and your entire being, conscious and subconscious, will align in perfect focus. Let me tell you a personal story. Years ago, I desired to travel and lecture throughout the United States, sharing these principles with all who listen. At the time, I had no means, no connections, no invitations. But each night I would fall asleep feeling the satisfaction of having completed successful lectures across the country. I felt the handshakes, heard the applause, experienced the gratitude of those whose lives had been transformed. I maintained this focus not for a night or a week, but consistently. And though the way was not immediately apparent, doors began to open. An invitation came from one city, then another. The mists for travel appeared. Within a year, what had existed only in my focused imagination became my living reality. The Bible says, "The light of the body is the eye." This is not speaking of the physical eye, but a focus where you place your attention. "If therefore thine eye be single, if your focus be undivided, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if your focus is scattered, divided between what is and what could be, between faith and doubt, how great is that darkness?" This is why a new level of focus is required for manifestation. Not the ordinary focus that shifts and wavers with circumstances, but a transcendent focus that remains fixed on the invisible reality of your desire until it solidifies in the visible world. Now, there is a certain practice that I have found invaluable for developing this transcendent focus. Each day, preferably in the morning when your mind is fresh, and in the evening before sleep, enter into a state of relaxation. Let your body become comfortable and your mind still. Then direct your attention inward to the center of your being, to that place where you know yourself to be. I am from this center. Consciously choose where to place your focus. See your desire as accomplished. Step into the scene. Make it first person, present tense. Do not see it as something that will happen. Experience it as something that is happening now. Involve all your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What would you taste or smell in the state of your wish fulfilled? Remain in this state for at least 5 minutes, fully absorbed in the reality of your desire fulfilled. Then throughout your day, when doubts arise, the old patterns of thought return, as they surely will gently bring your focus back to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This consistent redirection of focus is the discipline that leads to mastery. Let me share with you the testimony of a student who applied this principle of focused imagination. She had been estranged from her adult son for nearly a decade. No communication, no reconciliation. Despite many attempts, she came to understand that her focus had been on the arrangement itself, on the pain of separation, on all the reasons why reconciliation seemed impossible. I instructed her to shift her focus completely. Each night I told her, as you lie down to sleep, imagine hearing your son's voice on the telephone. Hear him express his love for you. Feel the warmth in your heart as reconciliation occurs. Fall asleep in this state. For 1 month, she maintained this focus with unwavering consistency. She reported that at first it was painful as it highlighted the absence of what she desired. But gradually the imaginal scene began to feel more natural, more real. Then one day, without any action on her part, the telephone rang. It was her son. The conversation mirrored what she had been imagining, even specific phrases she had heard in her imaginal scene. You see, her new level of focus had reconstructed her reality. She did not convince her son to call. She simply shifted the focus of her own consciousness, and all parties involved in her reality rearranged themselves to match her new focus. This is the creative power that sleeps within you. You are not a helpless observer of your life. You are its author. But authorship requires focused attention on the story you wish to write. Now, some of you may be thinking, this sounds like magical thinking. The world is real, solid, governed by physical laws. And to this I say, the physical universe is indeed governed by law. But it is the law of consciousness, not the laws of physics, that is fundamental. Physics describes the behavior of manifestation. Consciousness is the source of what manifests. Science itself is now confirming what the mystics have always known, that matter is not solid, but is mostly empty space, that a particle will pop in and out of existence, that observation of the behavior of particles. In other words, focus, conscious attention directly impacts physical reality. Quantum physics speaks of the observer effect, where the mere act of observation changes the behavior of subatomic particles. Is this not precisely what I am describing? Your focus, your observation changes the very fabric of your reality. Think about it this way. Your world is not outside you. The world you experience is a projection from within, filtered through your focus. Change your focus and you change the projection. This is not fantasy. This is the fundamental nature of reality. Consider the placebo effect, scientifically documented countless times. A patient believes they are receiving medicine, though they are given a sugar pill, and their body responds as though they received the actual medicine. Their focus, their belief, created physiological changes. This is not anomalous. It is a glimpse into the true creative process. But here is where many stumble. They try to use the power of focus as a technique while still believing in the supremacy of external conditions. They affirm abundance while believing in the reality of their limitation. They visualize health while believing in the power of their disease. Their focus is divided, and a divided focus cannot create coherently. A new level of focus requires a new understanding of the nature of reality. You must grasp, not intellectually but experientially, that the world shapes itself around your focus. As within, so without. As above, so below. This is the Hermetic principle that has been taught through the ages. Let me offer a practical exercise to develop this new level of focus. I call it living from the end. For the next 30 days, choose one desire that you wish to manifest. Make it something believable to you, yet not currently present in your life. Each morning upon waking, each evening before sleeping, and at least once during the day, close your eyes and enter the state of your wish fulfilled. Experience it with all your senses. Feel the emotion that accompanies its fulfillment. Give thanks for its completion. Then open your eyes and proceed with your day, but maintain the feeling that your desire is already accomplished. When you speak, speak from this assumption. When you act, act from this assumption. When you think, think from this assumption. At first, this will require conscious effort. You will catch yourself reverting to old patterns of focus. When this happens, do not condemn yourself. Simply notice and gently bring your focus back to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Persistence is key. Remember, you are establishing a new pattern of focus, and all new patterns require repetition until they become automatic. After 30 days of this practice, your subconscious mind will begin to accept your new focus as reality. And when the subconscious accepts something as real, it must externalize it in your experience. This is law. Now, I must address a critical point. This new level of focus cannot coexist with fear, worry, or anxiety. These emotional states indicate focus on what you do not want, and what you focus on expands when fear arises, and it will recognize it as a signal that your focus has shifted to an undesired outcome. Then consciously redirect your focus to the desired state. There is a passage in Scripture that beautifully illustrates this principle. Jesus was with his disciples in a boat when a storm arose. The disciples were terrified, focusing on the dangers of the storm. Jesus was asleep, undisturbed. When they woke him, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Then he said to his disciples, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" The disciples' focus was on the storm, on what they feared. Jesus' focus remained on perfect peace and safety, regardless of appearances. His faith, his unwavering focus on the desired state, calmed the waters. This is not merely a historical account or a miracle performed by someone special. It is a demonstration of the power available to anyone who maintains the proper focus. You are not required to calm literal storms, but you are called to calm the storms of circumstance in your life through proper focus. When the evidence of your senses contradicts your desire, where you focus on the temporary facts or upon the eternal truth of your creative power, there is another aspect of focus that is rarely discussed but vitally important. If you desire a loving relationship, focus not merely on finding a specific person, but on being loving in consciousness. How does a person who is deeply loved and loving think? How do they feel? How do they interact with others? Embody these qualities now, and the specific manifestation will follow. This shift from having to being is a profound one. It moves your focus from external conditions to internal states where true creative power resides. External conditions will always change and can be lost. What you become in consciousness is eternal and can never be taken from you. I knew a woman who desperately wanted to be married. Her focus was entirely on finding a husband, as though a piece of herself was missing and needed to be found externally. Despite numerous relationships, fulfillment eluded her. When we spoke, I suggested that she shift her focus from finding love to being loved, to embodying the consciousness of someone in a loving, fulfilling marriage. She began to focus on feeling complete within herself, appreciating her own company, making decisions from a place of partnership, even while physically alone. Within her own consciousness, she lived as though her perfect marriage was already a reality. She focused on gratitude for her wonderful husband, though no physical man was present. Within 3 months, she met a man who perfectly matched the consciousness she had been embodying. Their connection was immediate and deep, and they married within a year. But here is the interesting part. She later told me that even if she hadn't met him, she had already found what she was truly seeking. The feeling of completeness, connection, and love that she thought could only come from a relationship. This is the paradox of manifestation through focus. When you focus on lacking something and needing to get it, you perpetuate the consciousness of lack. When you focus on already being and having what you desire, you establish the consciousness of fulfillment, and the external must follow suit. Let us return to the core of our discussion. Everything you desire requires a new level of focus. Not the divided, wavering focus of the undisciplined mind, but the single-pointed, unwavering focus of one who knows their creative power. This focus is not strain or tense. It is the natural absorption in a beloved idea. It is falling in love with your vision so completely that it occupies your mind effortlessly. This kind of focus generates energy rather than depletes it. I urge you to take inventory of where your focus currently resides. What occupies your mental attention throughout the day? What thoughts do you return to habitually? What emotions dominate your inner landscape? These are the seeds that are growing into the circumstances of your life. If you do not like what you see manifesting in your experience, do not waste energy fighting against it or resisting it. All resistance amplifies. Instead, shift your focus completely to what you desire to experience. Give it your attention, your emotion, your conviction. Water this new seed with consistent focus until it crowds out the unwanted growth. Remember, the external world has no power over you except the power you give it through your focus. When you know this, truly know it, not just intellectually, but in the depths of your being, you become the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. Now, there is one final aspect of focus I must address, and it is perhaps the most important. The highest use of this creative power is not for material gain or personal advantage, though these are natural byproducts. The highest use is for the expansion of consciousness itself, for the realization that you are more than you appear to be. Focus ultimately on the grandest version of yourself, on the divine potential that sleeps within you. Focus on embodying love, wisdom, compassion, creativity. Focus on expressing the fullness of your being. You transcend the limitations of personal will and align with divine will, which always leads to greater freedom, greater joy, greater fulfillment than the personal mind could imagine. So I say to you tonight, everything you desire requires a new level of focus. Not more effort, not more struggle, not more sacrifice, but a new quality and direction of attention. Focus determines experience. Focus on problems, and problems multiply. Focus on solutions, and solutions appear. Focus on lack, and lack persists. Focus on abundance, and abundance grows. Focus on love, and love surrounds you. Focus on limitation, and you remain confined. Focus on possibility, and your world expands. The choice is always yours in each moment. Your power is not in some distant future when conditions improve. Your power is now in the focus you choose in this moment and the next after that. Begin tonight. As you leave this place, consciously direct your focus to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Maintain this focus despite all evidence to the contrary. Return to it when you waver, strengthen it when you doubt. Live from it when appearances mock it, and watch as the invisible gradually becomes visible. As your focus creates your reality, you are the operant power in your universe. You are the focus through which the infinite expresses itself. You are not merely human, you are divine, and your focus is the instrument of your divinity. Feel it now, know it now, live from it now, and watch as your world transforms before your very eyes. Remember the words of the song. Be still and know that I am God. In that perfect stillness of mind, in that single-pointed focus on the divine within, all things become possible. For when you know, truly know, that the I am within you is God, there is nothing to fear, nothing impossible, nothing beyond your creative reach. Everything you desire requires a new level of focus. Give yourself that gift. Focus on the highest, the best, the most beautiful, and true. Focus as though your fulfillment depends upon it, because it does. The world awaits your focus command. Speak it with conviction. Feel it with emotion. Know it with certainty, and watch as the universe conspires to bring it into being. For this is the law, and this is the promise. As within, so without. As above, so below. As you focus, so shall it be. Tonight you have been given the key. Use it wisely. Use it lovingly. Use it with conviction. And all that you desire shall be added unto you. When you leave this place, do not return to old patterns of thought. Maintain your new awareness, your new focus. For you have not heard these words by accident. You were drawn here by your own readiness to receive this truth. Now, having received it, you must live it. Go forth in the confidence that the creative power of the universe flows through you, that your focus directs this power, and that as you maintain your focus on the fulfillment of your desires, nothing can prevent their manifestation. I have shared with you the secret of creation itself. Honor it with your practice, prove it with your experience, and share it through your transformed life. Everything you desire requires a new level of focus. Begin now and make this the foundation of a new and glorious chapter in your journey. For you are meant to have all that your heart truly desires, not through struggle and strain, but through the focused power of your divine imagination. Now, let us close our eyes for a moment and feel the absolute truth of these words. Feel the presence of your fulfilled desire as a present reality. Know that it is done. Give thanks for its completion and carry this feeling with you as you go forward, maintaining your focus on the invisible reality until it becomes visible for all to see. Thank you and blessings on your journey of conscious creation.